He embodied everything a woman could admire. Disciplined and successful, radiating a sense of calm that made you feel secure, even amidst the surrounding chaos. He meant so much more to me than simply being my father-in-law. He was the cornerstone of our family, his presence a steadfast anchor. His name was Dylan, and had there been a guide on perfect fatherhood, he would have authored it. Yet no guide could elucidate how I found myself in a tangled web of emotions, whispering his son's name in guilt, while he uttered mine in reckless abandon. Yes, I became pregnant by my father-in-law, a reality I never intended to confront. It all started with a glance, followed by a hand that lingered just a moment too long, and then a kiss stolen away in the shadows of our shared solitude. I never anticipated feeling desired again, not after the man I wed began to treat me like a mere roommate instead of a wife, not after Daniel ceased making love to me and began crafting excuses. I was a wife left in neglect, an emotional wreck, and Dylan? He truly saw me, saw the depths of my despair, and that marked the beginning of my unraveling. There was a night when I should have turned away. I had ample justification to leave, yet I found myself falling for the one man who was never meant to be mine. In this narrative, I delve into the tale of how I betrayed not only my marriage, but also my own identity, revealing how a fleeting moment of weakness spiraled into a lifetime of regret. Welcome to the channel if you're new to this space. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to all our amazing subscribers who have stood by us through each story, every heartbreak, and all the unforeseen twists and turns. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and stay connected. Your support is the driving force behind this channel. Leave a comment below as we embark on this twisted journey. Share your thoughts. I assure you, it only gets more intricate from here. The story unfolds. My name is Noah, and I was 32 years old when my life began to unravel behind the closed doors of a beautiful suburban home in Charleston, South Carolina. To outsiders, I had it all. A charming husband, a loving in-law family, and a life many women would envy. But what they could not see was that my marriage was crumbling quietly. Daniel, my husband, had become a stranger. He was always away, either at work or with friends, and when he was home, he barely noticed me. It had been months since we were intimate, and whenever I mentioned it, he seemed to treat my concerns as an annoyance. I'm tired. Please allow me some time to rest. We will talk later. Later never came. I began to feel invisible, like a ghost living in my own skin. I would cook, clean, smile, and play the perfect wife, but deep inside, I was dying from neglect. It was during the slow descent into emotional starvation that Dylan, my father-in-law, moved in with us. He had recently retired and sold his house in Florida. Daniel insisted that he stay with us until he figured out where he wanted to settle permanently. Dylan was in his early 60s, but you would never guess it. He was tall, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, and always dressed like he was heading to a country club. But it wasn't merely his appearance that captivated. It was his very presence. He had a knack for noticing the details that Daniel often overlooked. He saw when I cut my hair, recognized when I donned a new dress, and sensed when fatigue weighed heavily on me. One evening, with a calm and deep voice, he asked about my weariness. I simply nodded, too exhausted to conjure a smile. He offered me a glass of wine and settled beside me on the porch. "You're doing great, Noah. I recognize the effort you put in. Daniel is lucky to have you." I should have dismissed it as a simple compliment, yet those words resonated within me, awakening a sense of appreciation that had long been dormant. From that moment, it began slowly with a delicate and dangerous allure. He would assist me in the kitchen, sitting beside me, laughing at jokes I found unamusing. We started watching movies together while Daniel toiled late into the night. Occasionally, our hands would brush against each other, first by chance, then with intention. There was a moment etched in my memory that I will never forget. On a stormy evening, lightning danced across the sky. Daniel found himself ensnared in traffic and called to inform me he wouldn't make it home for dinner. Dylan and I dined alone, the atmosphere thick with tension. The silence was deafening after we tidied up. I stood by the sink, drying my hands. When I sensed his presence behind me, he placed a hand on my shoulder. It lingered longer than it ought to have. "You are too beautiful to be this sad," he murmured softly, and my heart raced. I turned around, and for a fleeting moment our eyes locked. No words exchanged, just the weight of breath and tension hanging in the air. Then he kissed me. I should have pushed him away. I should have screamed, but instead I kissed him back. That night, sleep eluded me as I replayed the kiss, caught in a web of guilt and thrill. Daniel returned home around midnight, barely uttering a word before collapsing into bed. I lay awake, torn between shame and an insatiable hunger. A week later, it happened again. We found ourselves alone once more, with Daniel away on business. After dinner, we found ourselves in the same room. No words exchanged this time, just a charged glance, an undeniable spark. I surrendered to him right there on the guest room floor. It felt wrong. It felt unpleasant. Yet it was everything I had sworn I would never do. It was like the sweet release of air after drowning. However, I was unaware that the most challenging times were yet to come. If guilt could manifest a sound, it would be the heavy silence that settled in my chest the morning after I gave myself to Dylan. As we crossed paths in the kitchen, I could barely meet his gaze. The air between us was thick with unspoken transgressions. Yet he moved with an unwavering calm, as if nothing had changed. What had transpired felt all too familiar, almost destined. He poured himself a cup of coffee, a subtle smile touching his lips as he asked about my sleep. Internally, I was in turmoil, longing for him to see the destruction we had caused. Yet he remained absorbed in the newspaper, treating me as if I were merely an extension of the room. Ethan returned from his trip that evening, weary and oblivious. He kissed my cheek, a gesture born of habit rather than affection. I stood rigid in his embrace, the lingering scent of another man, his own father, clinging to me like an indelible mark. As the days unfolded, I endeavored to banish the memory from my thoughts, convincing myself it was a fleeting error that would never repeat. Yet Dylan had different intentions altogether. He grew bolder, his hand grazing my waist when no one was watching, whispering sweet nothings in my ear while Daniel occupied the other room. Once, he slipped a note into a folded towel in the linen closet. "You are more alive in my arms than you ever were in his." I crumpled it and sent it swirling down the toilet, my hands trembling throughout the act. There was a twisted power in our secret, a thrill that lingered long after the moment had passed. I loathed myself, yet I found it impossible to break free. Each time I vowed it would be the final instance, Dylan would utter something or perform an action that rendered me weak in the knees, silencing my thoughts. The situation worsened due to the minimal communication between Daniel and me. We shared a bed, yet our bodies remained distant. He had morphed into a stranger residing beneath my roof, while I felt increasingly like someone else's wife, tethered to Dylan more than I ever was to Daniel. Then, the symptoms began to surface. Initially, there was the unyielding fatigue, succeeded by the queasiness of the morning. Initially, I attributed it to stress, then to a stomach virus, but deep down, I truly knew, something was amiss, or perhaps it was a matter of perspective. While Daniel toiled away at work and Dylan strolled through the morning air, I found myself taking a test. My gaze fixated on the two pink lines, a silent plea for them to vanish. Yet they only deepened with each passing moment. My hand flew to my mouth, and I sank to the floor, rendered speechless and tearless. I was pregnant, and the identity of the father eluded me. My entire world tilted, every sound amplified, each second weighed down by gravity. I gripped the bathroom sink, staring into the mirror, struggling to recognize the woman who stared back at me. In a moment of profound betrayal, I found myself entangled in a web of deceit, having crossed a line that shattered the very foundation of my marriage. The weight of my secret, a child conceived in the shadows, loomed over me, threatening to unravel the lives of both my husband and his father. The idea of fleeing twirled in my thoughts, gathering a bag and disappearing before the truth exploded like a bomb. But the reality was stark. I had no refuge, no ally in this storm. So, I donned a mask of normalcy, though I was a woeful performer. My appetite vanished, and every brush of Daniel's hand sent tremors through my body. I flinched at the slightest noise. Dylan, ever observant, was the first to notice my decline. One evening, he found me in the pantry, his voice a low whisper filled with concern. "You are pale," he remarked. "You have barely eaten in days." What? What is happening? I attempted to maneuver around him, but he caught my arm softly. "Is it what I think it is?" I gazed up at him, my eyes wide. That was all he required. A slow, wicked smile crept across his face as he stepped closer, his hand gliding to my lower belly, as if he were already aware. "I always knew it would happen," he whispered. "You were never his, you were mine the moment you needed me." I recoiled from him, a mix of disgust and fear coursing through me. "Stop, do not say that," I urged, yet his eyes sparkled with a shadowy pride. He perceived not a blunder, but a triumph. The weeks that ensued were intolerable, and I concealed my pregnancy wrapped in oversized sweaters and long hours spent in the bathroom. I chose silence, needing time to think, to breathe, to navigate my next steps. One afternoon, Daniel found me in a state of nausea. He caressed my back, a gesture that brought to mind the old Daniel, the man I once married. For a fleeting moment, I felt human again. "Are you okay, babe?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. "You've been off lately." I gazed up at him, my eyes brimming with panic. I think I might be pregnant." His face illuminated with the wonder of a child encountering snow for the very first time. "Are you really serious?" "Oh my goodness, Noah, that is truly remarkable." I nodded slowly, my heart breaking as I watched the man I once loved. I celebrated the dawn of a life that might not be his. That night, I retired early, yet sleep eluded me. My guilt had transformed into a monstrous entity gnawing at me from within. Around midnight, a gentle knock echoed at my bedroom door. I opened it just a crack, and there he was, Dylan, draped in his robe, exuding an unsettling calmness mixed with danger. He expressed the need for a conversation. "You cannot keep this secret much longer. Ultimately, someone will become aware, and when that moment arrives, you will need to decide where your loyalty lies." I slammed the door in his face, but it was too late. The harm was inflicted, and the beginnings of ruin had taken root. Blossoming within me, every smile from Daniel brought tears to my eyes, hidden away from the world, while Dylan's every word sent shivers down my spine. I felt a looming storm, one I was powerless to prevent. I found myself in the midst of a battle ignited by a single, stolen kiss, and now the truth was relentlessly pressing against the confines of my silence, yearning to emerge. The day I finally shared the news of my pregnancy with Daniel was the moment I broke every promise I had ever made to myself, to him, and to the life we had carefully built together. I sat across from him. At the kitchen table, I held a mug of cold coffee, the silence between us thick with unexpressed thoughts. My gaze flickered to the window, where the leaves rustled gently in the suburban breeze, as if the outside world could somehow protect me from the tempest I was on the verge of releasing. Daniel's expression was one of openness and hope, blissfully ignorant of the shadows that danced beneath my words. "No, this is good news. We are going to be parents." His voice trembled with enthusiasm, yet I found it impossible to muster a smile. I just swallowed, firm and softly spoken. "I have something to share with you. Something that will alter everything." His smile wavered, confusion creeping across his features like a shadow. "What do you mean?" I inhaled deeply, tears on the verge of falling. I'm not certain if the baby is yours." Time appeared to stand still, the moment stretching out like a delicate thread ready to snap. Daniel's eyes widened, disbelief washing over his features. "What are you saying?" "I made a mistake," I admitted, my voice trembling. "I felt weak as I confessed. I shared a bed with your father." His face drained of color, and he stared at me as if I had turned into a stranger. Right before his eyes, the room felt as though it was closing in on me with every passing second, each heartbeat a pulse of agony. "How could you?" he finally whispered, his voice trembling. "How could you do this to me, to us?" I had no answers, only shame and regret that consumed me like an unquenchable fire. I did not know. I was lost, and I loathed how distant we had become. It was a terrible mistake. Do not, his voice trailed off. Rose, don't attempt to justify it. There's nothing to clarify. You shattered us. Daniel pushed back from the table, running his hands through his hair. I need time. I do not know if I can ever forgive you. Days passed in silence, and the house felt more frigid, more desolate. I attempted to maintain the facade of normalcy, yet the fissures were too vast and the harm was irrevocable. Then Dylan's game took a darker turn. He began appearing at the house without warning, sending text messages laced with both promises and threats. One evening, Daniel stumbled upon a message on my phone. You belong to me now, and so does that child. When he confronted me, I laid bare the truth, the lies, the secrets, the tangled relationship I had with his father. He was enraged, shattered beyond expression. Yet there lingered something else in his eyes, something shadowy and intricate. At that instant, clarity dawned upon me. The betrayal had shattered us, yet unveiled a concealed truth. Dylan was not the person Daniel thought he was. The father he revered was, in reality, a cunning monster cloaked in a facade of charm. One evening, Daniel and I sat down to engage in a meaningful conversation about what the future held. I love you, he murmured softly, but I can no longer remain in the dark. I will fight for us, but you must be truthful, no more secrets. I nodded, my heart breaking and healing simultaneously. I promised him a truth. Weeks later, I found myself seated in a small doctor's office, clutching the ultrasound photos of our unborn child. Youth. The baby's heartbeat resonated like a tiny drum, a pulse of hope amid the turmoil. I reflected on the life blossoming within me, born from betrayal, yet embodying new beginnings. When I shared the news with Daniel, he grasped my hand firmly, his grip a promise. He assured me that we would figure this out together. It was far from the fairy tale I had envisioned, yet it was undeniably real. After months of restraint, I finally allowed myself to welcome hope. I appreciate your support as we navigate this complex and challenging path together. A narrative woven with love, betrayal, and the stark truths that often accompany family and forgiveness. Life is seldom a simple dichotomy, and often those we hold dear can inflict wounds we never anticipated. If this narrative resonated with you, provoked thought, or unearthed challenging emotions, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. Your voices and experiences are invaluable. They serve as a reminder that we are not alone in our battles. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing. Your support is what sustains this channel, enabling me to illuminate more authentic, heartfelt stories. Each subscription represents more than just a number. It fuels the essence of every tale and every truth shared. Each moment we share allows us to confront these narratives with bravery, compassion, and an open heart. Your presence in this community is truly appreciated, and I look forward to our next story together with great enthusiasm.